And we're back again. We're going to try to reassemble the carbine using only the recoil spring guide and the brass casing that we used to disassemble it in the previous video. So our precious carbine is still in pieces on the desktop, and as you can see, of course, we still have no safety, no magazine catch, nothing inside. So we're going to go ahead and start off by finding the pieces and seeing if we can put them into the proper location. So obviously I think everyone knows when you're reassembling these you need to put the divoted or the beveled point toward the front, and that's what allows the spring to give you the nice pop and click whenever you put things into the proper place. Spring guide, pop it down into the front. It's a handy dandy little place for that, and that of course lets us know that it's stuck and solid in place. Secondarily, then I'll go ahead and take my recoil spring guide, or my magazine catch spring. That's my sear spring. Find the right one. There we go. I'm going to find that, pop that into place. Because my magazine catch has come apart and someone has replaced it, I did not replace it properly, and so the metal piece just rests on it and isn't actually locked into place. It doesn't prevent me from putting the piece together. So I'll go ahead and slide the magazine catch into its proper location. It's now somewhat tight fitting, and as you probably can tell, if you were to look at the front of it, where is the video? It's reversed. Yeah. So now you can tell that this safety spring is actually what's holding it, keeping it from going into place. So I'm going to take my clever tool, and I don't know if I can do this entirely within the eyesight or the visual shot of the piece, but all I'm going to do is take my handy tool and I'm going to press down, and that allows me then to pop the piece right and tidy back into place. So now I've reassembled that portion and it is working as it is expected to work. Next, we're going to take our trigger. And we're going to do what we typically do with the trigger. We're going to take and we're going to set it down into the system, but in this case I'm going to rock it forward. So you'll see the bevel here. I'm going to rock this where it's actually sitting at a very slightly forward cant before I get it too deep into the trigger housing. What that allows me to do now is, instead of using the trigger spring tool, I can now take the trigger spring and I can rest into the rocker. I can rest into the location, and I can then pinch between my fingers and rock the hammer backward as I'm sliding the hammer backward. And now you should see the top of the hammer come up as the back piece is going into position. And if I do this right and time everything properly, then what will result in that is that I will then get the quick and general ability to slid it down too deep. Yep. So I should now have it in this position here, and you probably can see, because of the handy dandy trigger housing hole, you can see that it's partially there into place. And all I'm going to do is take my thumb on the top section, and I'm going to stabilize it on the bottom section of the trigger, and I'm going to push, and that actually just causes the entire piece just to fall into place. Slide into place, and then I push down, and that aligns up my hole then for my hammer pin. Now the best way to do that is, of course, just to take the hammer pin, stick it in the top side to where it actually comes through and where it doesn't ingress too far inside, to where it doesn't block the insertion or the placement of the sear. Basic component, we already know, because we've all assembled these and disassembled these dozens or hundreds of times, if not more. And we lay the sear then back down. We just drop the sear in on top of that spring, slide it forward to make sure that the spring is engaged on the bottom of the sear. Now if you can do so, you can see that I actually have small enough fingers I can place inside, and I can drive that forward just enough to where I can now actually drive the thing in with my finger, And if I need the extra leverage, then of course I could use the recoil spring guide as well to put that into place. So that puts my my trigger and sear are all nice and tidy back into position now. Next piece, we already know, because we've all done this dozens if not hundreds of times, is we simply lay the hammer in to position, push it back into place with just a small measure of effort, lay the pin, and of course the hammer is now locked into position, ready to go. Slide it forward so it engages the sear and release the tension. There we go. So now the hammer is forward. We're ready to go with the next phase, which is the insertion of the hammer plunger and spring. This is by far the trickiest part. This is by far the funniest part of this video if you care to watch me fumble with it for a moment, in that it takes the greatest amount of effort and finesse, and usually ends up with me using a few choice words. So we're going to take, as we used before, now we're going to insert our tool into the hole, and we're going to prepare to try to do this without too much cussing. The whole trick with this here is to go ahead and get this properly aligned into the spring seat at the end, and not let it bend too much in the process, not let the spring bend too much in the process. Also, because of its location and placement, it becomes difficult at times to do this without accidentally pressing the hammer back. And if you do that, then of course you end up with in a great deal of annoyance and quandary. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and try this. It's actually stuck. I'm going to shift that position around just a little bit. I'm going to try that again. And it's not going. So I said it can be done. I didn't say I could do it perfectly every time, but sometimes you just get lucky and it does just go into place. And there we go. So now the piece is now completely in place, and so on, ready to go. If you care to have me bore you with the remainder of the assembly, we'll go ahead and just take our bolt, turn the bolt slightly to the side, it rests into place. You do the usual where you hook the guide over, pops into place. Everything is there. Now our disassembly process is almost complete, except we have to put our tools back. So we're going to put our tool back into position. There it is. And then of course put the trigger housing back into place. For that, it's always easier to do with the hammer depressed. And of course put our pin back into place. So there it is, the disassembly and reassembly of the carbine using the brass casing and otherwise. And if you really want to see the boring last few seconds of it, you now take this piece that we've just reassembled, and it slides right down into the stock. Thank you for your time.